Last time, we covered 4 quiet Japanese habits that shape how ordinary households build extraordinary wealth. Refusing to waste what you already have, finding work you would not need to escape from, writing your spending down by hand instead of letting an app do it silently, and leaving deliberate empty space so you stop filling every gap with a purchase. Today we finish the list, and this second half is where things get personal. Because we are about to look at the one habit that quietly sets your entire earning ceiling, the one nobody wants to admit they practice, and the story of 2 neighbors whose lives ended up dramatically far apart in net worth, despite starting in the exact same place, on the exact same income, in the exact same city. If you have not seen part 1 yet, the short version is this: refusing to waste what you already have, finding work you would not need to escape from, writing spending down by hand, and leaving deliberate empty space in your week, instead of filling every gap with a purchase. Everything from here builds directly on that foundation, so let's keep going. After the Second World War, Toyota was in rough shape, underfunded, inefficient, producing cars nobody particularly wanted, while American manufacturers dominated with far greater resources. What turned things around was not a single brilliant strategy. It was kaizen, continuous, tiny, permanent improvement, one small change at a time, contributed by every single worker on the floor. A worker noticing that walking across the factory for a tool wasted 40 seconds might simply move the tool closer. Multiply that by thousands of workers and thousands of tiny fixes, repeated year after year, and you eventually get one of the most efficient manufacturers on Earth. A company that would go on to outproduce and outvalue rivals many times its original size. Applied to your own finances, kaizen looks almost boring. You do not overhaul your entire budget in one dramatic weekend. You change one small thing this month and let it become permanent. Cancel a forgotten subscription. Next month, renegotiate one bill. The month after, pack lunch one extra day a week. None of it requires willpower in the traditional sense, because each change is small enough to stick before you add the next one. People who track this kind of gradual habit change often find that, without any single dramatic sacrifice, they are saving several hundred extra dollars a month within a year or two, money that was never budgeted, so much as it simply stopped leaking. Invested consistently over a couple of decades, that kind of steady monthly increase can realistically turn into several $100,000, built entirely from changes too small to have ever felt painful. The trap most people fall into is trying to fix everything on the 1st of January. A brand new budget, a brand new gym schedule, a brand new everything, all at once. It feels productive for about 2 weeks, and then it collapses under its own weight. Kaizen works because it never asks you to hold more than one new habit at a time. Change one thing, let it become boring. Then, and only then, add the next. Ask yourself honestly, how much of what you bought last month was really for someone else's benefit? The car that is slightly nicer than you need, the bag with the visible logo, the renovation that was really staged for guests rather than lived in by you. Traditional Japanese social codes treated open displays of wealth as a kind of character flaw rather than a mark of success, a sign that someone needed outside validation to feel secure in what they had. Wealthy families quietly compounded fortunes across generations precisely because very little was ever spent performing that wealth for an audience. That pattern still shows up in modern Japanese business culture, where senior executives at major companies are often seen driving unremarkable cars and living in understated homes. Not from financial hardship, but from a cultural instinct that a title or a car should never need to do the talking a person's actual work should be doing. Estimates on status or appearance-driven spending in Western households, purchases made mainly because of how they would be perceived by other people, run into the low thousands of dollars annually for a lot of families. Left uninvested over a working lifetime, that is tens of thousands of dollars spent essentially on an audience that was rarely paying as much attention as we assumed. A useful filter before any bigger purchase. Would I still buy this if literally nobody would ever see it? If the honest answer is no, you have just caught a purchase that belongs in your future instead of in your driveway. There is a well-known idea in Japanese craftsmanship called shokunin, someone who dedicates an entire lifetime not just to being competent at something, but to relentlessly mastering it. The most famous modern example is a sushi chef whose tiny 10-seat restaurant tucked inside a Tokyo subway station, earned multiple Michelin stars, and a years-long waiting list, built on nothing more dramatic than 60 years spent obsessing over one craft. New apprentices in that kitchen reportedly spend their first year or two doing nothing but learning to properly cook the rice, because mastering the fundamentals is treated as the only real foundation for everything after. Here is the financial logic behind it. People who stay broadly competent tend to compete on price because they are easily replaced. People who go deep into one narrow area over many years tend to compete on being genuinely hard to replace. And that shift alone can be worth tens of thousands of dollars a year in earning power within the same general profession, simply because the conversation stops being, "How much are you asking?" and starts being, "How do we keep you?" Most of us are taught to do the opposite. Stay broad, stay current, keep adding new skills sideways. There is nothing wrong with breadth, except that breadth is easy to commoditize. Depth, sustained for a decade or two, tends to compound in a way breadth rarely does. There is a Japanese custom called okaeshi, the practice of always returning a favor slightly more generously than it was given, not as a transaction, but almost as a philosophy about how goodwill should circulate. Historically, merchant families who practiced this consistently built informal networks of reciprocal support that could survive an entire economic downturn. When one family struggled, the network quietly held them up, and when the crisis passed, everyone rebuilt together. People with genuinely strong, reciprocal professional networks tend to report meaningfully higher lifetime earnings than people without one. Not because they are more talented, but because opportunities, referrals, and introductions simply find them instead of requiring them to chase everything alone. That kind of network advantage, compounded over a couple of decades, can realistically be worth several $100,000 in opportunities that never would have appeared otherwise. The practice itself is almost embarrassingly simple. One genuine act of giving a week, an introduction, a piece of knowledge you did not have to share. Help offered with no specific string attached. You cannot predict exactly what comes back, or when, but over enough years, something reliably does, usually from a direction you never would have arranged yourself. The final idea is kanso, simplicity through deliberate elimination. Not minimalism as an aesthetic, but simplicity as a survival strategy for consistency. There is an old story about a wealthy but overwhelmed merchant who visited a Zen master, drowning in accounts, advisors, and financial products he could not fully explain. The master poured tea until the cup overflowed, then pointed out the obvious. A full cup cannot hold anything more, and neither can a mind buried under needless complexity. The merchant simplified everything down to one savings account, one investment account holding a handful of simple funds, one credit card paid in full every month, and a single monthly savings target. His entire financial life reduced to one page he could actually remember. Within a few years, he had grown his wealth more than in the previous decade of sophisticated complexity. Not because simple strategies are mathematically superior, but because a plan you can actually remember is a plan you can actually follow for decades. And decades of consistency is the one variable that matters most in building real wealth. Picture two neighbors in the same mid-sized city. Both start working at 30. Both earn a comfortable but unremarkable middle-class income their entire careers. Both retire at 65. The first neighbor lives the way most people around them live. Nothing reckless, just normal. New car every few years because that is what people do. Spending as a way of managing a job they merely tolerated for decades. Never writing expenses down. Financial accounts scattered across a few institutions. Barely reviewed. Plenty of purchases made with an audience in mind. At 65, their net worth sits somewhere around $400,000. Enough for a comfortable retirement, but not enough to stop worrying about it. And part-time work becomes necessary to fully cover the gap. The second neighbor quietly practices these 9 habits for the same 40 years, without anyone particularly noticing. Same modest Toyota, kept for over a decade and repaired rather than replaced. A handwritten notebook kept every single month without fail. A deliberately empty hour protected each week. One small financial improvement made permanent every month for decades. No purchases made to impress anyone. 4 decades spent going deeper into one professional skill instead of chasing every new trend. A small habit of giving first, consistently, for 30 years. and an entire financial plan that fits comfortably on a single notebook page. By 65, that second neighbor's net worth is well into 7 figures, several times larger than the first, from the same income, in the same city, over the exact same 40 years. Nobody handed either of them a different starting point. The entire gap came from 9 quiet, unremarkable habits, repeated consistently while nobody was watching and nobody was impressed. Visible spending is expensive. Quiet habits compound. So here is the honest question to leave you with. Which one of these 9 habits could you realistically start this week? Not perfectly, just consistently. Pick one. A notebook. An empty hour. One subscription canceled for good. Let me know in the comments which of the 9 surprised you most across both parts. And if you would like a deeper breakdown of any single habit, say so. That might be exactly what we cover next.